Well, Lew Wallace's great 19th century novel, Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, has been made many times into films, twice as silent movies in the early part of the 20th century. Then, of course, the wonderful 1959 version we all know, starring Charlton Heston. Many would say Heston was born to play the role. He won an Oscar for it. The movie comes to a climax with the famous chariot scenes and all that. Well, Roma Downey and Mark Burnett have made an up-to-date version now of Ben-Hur. And like the earlier one, it has a lot of sweep and visual grandeur. It has a charismatic actor playing the title role. And it also climaxes with this tremendous chariot race, this time depicted with all the CGI and special effects we have today. I think the difference, though, between the 59 version and this one is the Christian difference is even more fully on display. The Christian theme, namely, of forgiveness. Now, most of us probably know the great story by now, having seen this film, but it's about Judah Ben-Hur, who is a young man, an aristocrat from a Jewish family around the time of Christ, living in Jerusalem. In this version, Messala is a friend of his, a Roman, who was adopted into the family as a young man. So effectively, the two men are brothers. Messala leaves as a young man to go off and fight in the Roman wars, comes back many years later, and he accuses his brother, Judah, of harboring a zealot, an opponent of Rome. It's a false charge, but he accuses him and then brutally arrests and imprisons the family and sends Judah, his brother effectively, off to the miserable life of a galley slave on a Roman ship. And then for 5 long, horrific years, Judah does this work and harbors all the time this profoundly deep, understandable resentment and desire for revenge. Well, in the course of a great sea battle, he manages to escape from his ship. He's washed ashore, and he's found by this sheikh, played in this version by the inevitable Morgan Freeman. Whenever you want someone with a lot of gravitas, you get Morgan Freeman. So he plays the sheikh who rescues him, and he happens to be someone who races chariots. And so he draws this young man into this world and trains him as a charioteer. And now Judah senses something important because he knows what the sheikh wants to do above all is to race and to win in the great hippodrome in Jerusalem. And so Judah sees it as his chance to have revenge on his brother because Messala in the ensuing years has become himself a champion racer. So that's the basic story. So as I say, this movie climaxes with the tremendous chariot race. But here, too, a major difference with the earlier version emerges. So remember, in the Charlton Heston version, Messala is defeated. He's terribly injured. And he dies in his anger and despair without ever being reconciled to Judah. In this one, now, Judah wins the race, and Messala is indeed gravely injured. But the two brothers manage to be reconciled. They manage really to forgive each other. And in fact, the movie comes to its conclusion as the two brothers ride off together, having been restored in their friendship. So, as I say, this theme of forgiveness, even of those who are our most brutal enemies, forgiveness of those who have harmed us profoundly, is what comes forward. So here's the question that the movie begs. How is this possible? I would say for most people, the lex talionis, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, is about the best we can do. Think about it. If someone's injured you, well, there's such a powerful instinct to get back at them, maybe 3 times as much as they got you. You've hurt me, I'll kill you. You see it all over the world. Just watch the news every night. So the lex talionis, we think, well, maybe that's the best we can do, is limited to eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But actually, to forgive your enemies, to forgive those who've harmed you massively, what makes that possible? See, I would say, humanly speaking, it is impossible. Now, at this point, remember, Ben-Hur is subtitled A Tale of the Christ. Now it's peculiar because Christ figures in a handful of scenes in this novel and in the movie. So why in the world would it be a tale of the Christ? Well, just before the great race, Judah, who had had a fleeting contact with Jesus before he went off as a galley slave, is drawn to Calvary, to the site of the crucifixion. And there he sees Jesus dying on the cross with words of forgiveness on his lips. And with that, it's a nice touch. He's holding a stone. He's gripping a stone in his hand, as though, thinking in the Jewish context, to throw at his enemy. And in the presence of Christ, he lets go of the stone, as though letting go of his own resentment. Now, why? Because the cross is not just one noble figure willing to forgive his enemies. The cross is God himself having taken upon himself the whole of human negativity. Having taken upon his shoulders all of human sin, is able to swallow it up in the ever greater divine mercy and forgiveness. It's because we've been forgiven by God that we now have the capacity to forgive, yes, even our worst enemies. Humanly speaking, not possible, but through God's grace, mediated by the cross of Jesus, it does become a possibility. And I think that's what's being told here in this story, this tale of the Christ. Because though he's in a few scenes, it is his story. See, he's the one that makes the central dynamic of the story possible.